I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Sergei V. Lavrov, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished Secretary General, colleagues. The transformation processes that have set in motion the Middle East and North Africa reflect the aspirations of the peoples of those countries for a better life, broader opportunities for self-expression, participation in political life, greater economic and social benefits. These processes are still far from over, and it is difficult to make clear predictions about their prospects, since sometimes they're accompanied by painful civilizational, ethnic, religious and political rifts, and these create problems in terms of regional stability. The goal for the international community is to ensure that these transformations do more good than harm to the Arab world. The priority is to ensure that changes are peaceful and democratic. Fundamental human rights and freedoms are respected, as well as the rights of ethnic and religious minorities, including, of course, the rights of Christians. We follow with empathy the process of democratic state building in Egypt and Tunisia, Morocco, as well as the efforts of the Yemen government to stabilize the situation in combating terrorism, for the efforts of the Libyan transitional government to bring normal life back to the country, preparing for elections and disarming insurgent groups. We provide humanitarian assistance and stand ready to help in economic recovery. For all of us in this chamber, the international dimension of the continued Arab Spring is of primary interest. We believe that we can already draw some conclusions. First, whatever goals might be set in any given situation, they should not be achieved by misleading the international community or manipulating UN Security Council decisions. Otherwise, the credibility of the Council is diminished, trust among its members is eroded, and this undermines the ability of the Council to make decisions in the future. Second, the organisations or countries that volunteered to implement Security Council mandates must give full account of their actions to the Council. That applies to NATO also, which, as we all know, offered to secure a no-fly zone in Libya, but in reality engaged in massive bombings. It is sad that there is yet to be any investigation following information about civilian casualties caused by those bombings. We believe the Secretary General should bring clarity to the matter by invoking the 2008 Joint Declaration on UN-NATO Secretariat Cooperation. Thirdly, interference from outside using raw military force increases the threat of illicit spread of arms, thus jeopardizing stability of the region. We should draw serious conclusions regarding the situation in Syria. It remains a cause of grave concern for Russia and the whole international community. Making hasty demands for regime change, imposing unilateral sanctions designed to trigger economic difficulties and social tensions in countries, inducing the opposition to continue its confrontation with the authorities instead of promoting dialogue, making calls in support of armed confrontation and even to foreign military intervention. All of the above are risky recipes of geopolitical engineering that can only result in the spread of conflict. There is no doubt whatsoever that the Syrian authorities bear a huge share of responsibility for the current situation, but one shouldn't ignore the fact that for a long time now they've been fighting not unarmed men but combat units such as the so-called Free Syrian Army and extremist groups including Al-Qaeda, which have lately committed a series of murderous terrorist acts. So if our absolute priority and sincere wish is to immediately put an end to any violence and provide humanitarian assistance to the civilian population, then at this stage we shouldn't talk about who started it, but rather discuss realistic and feasible approaches which would allow us to achieve the ceasefire as a priority. From the outset, our approach was clear and consistent, aimed at finding an early solution to the Syrian crisis without violence through a Syrian-led inclusive political dialogue and implementation of long overdue reforms. The following 5 principles of settlement that Russia and the Arab League states agreed upon on March 10 follow in the same spirit. 1. End of violence from all sources. 2. An impartial monitoring mechanism. 3. No outside interference. 4. Unimpeded access for humanitarian assistance to all Syrians. 5. Strong support for Kofi Annan's mission to launch political dialogue between the government and all opposition groups, as mandated by the terms of reference endorsed by the Secretary General and the Arab League. On that basis, we are prepared to agree a Security Council resolution, as we were ready to do last autumn when our draft resolution was put forward. Sadly, it wasn't supported by all Security Council members. The Arab Spring should in no way be used as a pretext to weaken attention to the Palestinian issue. We're convinced that the conflict potential in the Middle East and North Africa will remain high until a comprehensive settlement is achieved in the Middle East within the existing international legal framework. This is a truly historic obligation for the international community and for the Security Council. Unfortunately, the trends we've been witnessing lately delay rather than bring closer this prospect, both in political terms, when the settlement parameters that have been repeatedly endorsed by the Security Council, the Quartet and the parties themselves are put in doubt, and in practical terms too, when settlement activity of Israel in the West Bank is literally shrinking the ground for the necessary agreements. A particular concern is violation of the ceasefire following the resurgence in strikes between Israel and the Gaza Strip, where civilians are suffering on both sides. Under these circumstances, the international community must step up its efforts. This applies above all to the quartet that should start, as we discussed with our colleagues today before the start of today's meeting, which should start working on a regular basis and persistently create a conducive environment for continuing direct Israeli-Palestinian contacts, aiming at full-fledged negotiations. We all welcome the initiative in Jordan, which held a series of very useful meetings between the Israelis and the Palestinians in Amman this January, and we want that initiative to be continued. Russia confirms also our proposal for closer cooperation of the Quartet with the relevant structures of the League of Arab States. We're confident that what's also still relevant is the Arab Peace Initiative, and that its comprehensive implementation will ensure the creation of a Palestinian state that will guarantee the security of Israel and will establish peace and stability throughout the Middle East. In order, Russia is ready for close cooperation with all responsible members of the international community in order to attain those goals. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Minister Lavrov for his statement.